China just tested its Lanyue lunar lander, raising a big question. Is China's space program going to beat NASA's Artemis back to the moon? The new moon race is heating up. In this episode of the Orbital Pulse, we'll cover China's recent and expected lunar mission progress, NASA's Artemis program and its struggles, and we'll talk about what it means if the US or China establishes a permanent lunar base. On August 7th, 2025, China's space program tested the Lanyue lunar lander in the Hebei province. The test involved tethering the lander above a lunar-like surface to simulate the environment of the moon. The lander practiced emergency shutdown procedures, tested vertical takeoff processes, and carried out landing maneuver techniques. Effectively, they carried out what will be a very difficult part of a crewed mission to and from the moon. This test is a critical milestone for achieving China's goal of getting humans to the moon by 2030, demonstrating that they have the hardware to compete against the US's Artemis program. But China isn't just aiming for flag and footprints kind of moment. It has bigger plans. Together with Russia, China is planning to build a permanent base at the moon's south pole called the International Lunar Research Station, or ILRS. China plans to begin their construction of the ILRS as early as 2031, shortly after they land their astronauts on the moon. And by 2035, China and Russia are planning to integrate a nuclear reactor to power the ILRS. 17 countries have already signed formal agreements with Beijing to participate. This directly rivals NASA's Artemis Accords, which already has 40 signatories. For context, the Artemis Accords are a list of principles that build upon the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, but we'll talk about that on a later video. On the other hand, Artemis is the US's mission to send humans back to the moon, to establish the first lunar orbiting space station, and to eventually build out a lunar base. Artemis I was uncrewed and successfully launched and returned in 2022. Artemis II is a crewed lunar flyby planned for 2026. And NASA's Artemis III is targeting 2027 to land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon, using SpaceX's Starship human landing system. Unfortunately, NASA's Artemis program has faced budget delays, technical complications, and criticism for its political intertwinings. While China's timeline to get humans to the moon by 2030 rather than 2027 is a little bit more conservative, its steady, state-funded approach could prove more reliable. And if any of the Artemis programs slip by even a year, China could close the gap. So we may see a razor-thin window with both nations competing to complete historic lunar missions in the same time frame. If China and Russia successfully build out the ILRS, the implications are tremendous. The first implication is prestige. Just as Apollo elevated the US global influence, ILRS would do the same for China. Second is resource access. The South Pole's water ice could fuel long-term habitation and even rocket fuel depots, a strategic asset for whoever controls it. Third is governance. A China-Russia lunar base would rival the Artemis coalition and potentially fracture international space norms. This isn't just about who plants the flag first. This is about who shapes the future rules of space. Will the moon be governed by cooperative accords or by blocks of competing interests? Whether Artemis lands on the moon in 2027 or China achieves its 2030 target, the race to build infrastructure, alliances, and an everlasting presence will define the 2030s and beyond in space. This is the Orbital Pulse, and the moon is no longer just a destination. It's a stage for the next great power competition. Who do you think will land first? Make sure to comment below and subscribe for more insights beyond Earth.